Today my ex-husband begs me to come back. His family treats me like a queen. And the second wife he dreamed of apologizes to me in tears. But 2 years ago, I was just the selfish first wife who didn't want to share my husband's wealth with another woman. What they didn't know is that this wealth, well, you'll discover who was really financing everyone's life. And when the truth came to light, the game changed in a way nobody expected. My name is Aisha. I'm 32 years old. I work in technology. And for 8 years, I lived what I thought was a perfect marriage. Before I continue with my testimony, write in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story is reaching around the world. When I married Yusuf, he was a newly graduated engineer earning very little, while I already had an established career in IT. From the beginning, I noticed he had immense pride. He always insisted on paying the bills when we went out, even if it compromised his budget. Out of love, I began helping with small things, a bill here, a purchase there. I wanted to preserve his dignity as the head of the household. But 3 secrets were simultaneously forming in our life. The first was about how much I really earned, the second about who paid our household bills, and the third, well, you'll discover that when I tell you about the generosity that his family so admired in Yusuf. What started small grew in ways I never imagined. Over time, my income tripled with promotions and my parallel consulting business. While Yusuf earned about $1,000 monthly, I was already making over $3,500 per month. But I kept this in absolute secrecy, continuing to live simply without showing off. Secretly, I began covering practically everything: household bills, help for his family, emergencies. Yusuf thought his salary comfortably covered our life. When we went out to dinner, he insisted on paying with that masculine pride I loved so much. When the electricity, water, and internet bills arrived, I had already discreetly paid everything online before they even reached the table. He saw the paid receipts and thought, good, my salary is covering everything. The situation became more complex when his family began having difficulties. His sister Mariam needed to pay for her private law degree, $5,000 per semester. Yusuf was desperate, wanting to help, but unable to. That's when I made my first secret transfer. I put the money in his account and said I had received an extra bonus at work and wanted him to help his sister. The sparkle in his eyes when he managed to pay for Mariam's studies is something I'll never forget. He felt like the hero brother, the family provider, and I felt fulfilled providing him this happiness. When his parents had health problems, his mother needed gallbladder surgery costing $4,000. Again, I was the one who financed everything, always secretly, always making it seem the money came from him. The entire family began seeing Yusuf as this prosperous and generous man. MashaAllah, what a blessed son, his mother would say. Alhamdulillah, Allah gave you a generous heart and the income to help the family, his brothers would say. And Yusuf genuinely believed this was true, that his income was growing, that Allah was blessing his work. I became the perfect wife in the family's eyes. I never complained about the financial help, never questioned his decisions, always supported when he decided to help someone. They didn't know I supported it because it was my own money being used. For years, I built this perfect illusion. Yusuf was the provider husband, I was the understanding wife, and the family lived happily with his generosity. But I still didn't know I was creating the biggest problem of my life, something that would happen exactly in our 8th year of marriage and would change everything forever. A decision Yusuf would make based on the false impression of his financial capacity, a decision that would test the limits of my patience and love. A year ago, Yusuf came home with an expression I had never seen before. He was nervous, anxious, as if he was about to tell me something that would change our lives forever. He kept pacing around the living room, starting to speak and stopping, until finally he sat beside me and said the words that would destroy our marriage. He wanted a second wife. The woman was Zara, only 23 years old, whom he had met at his cousin's wedding. According to Yusuf, she was a rare pearl, young, beautiful, pious, from a humble family, and who knew the value of things. He explained that he had prayed extensively, consulted the imam at the mosque, and was certain that Allah was opening this door for him. Aisha, I have the financial means for this now. Alhamdulillah, Allah has been blessing me at work. I can rent an apartment for Zara, I can give her a dignified life, and still maintain our standard of living, he said, with a conviction that chilled my blood. Conviction based on a lie I myself had created. I tried to argue in every possible way. I spoke about our plans to have children, about how happy we were, about how polygamy should be an exception, not a rule. I reminded him of the Prophet's words, peace be upon him, about treating wives with absolute justice. But Yusuf was determined. You're being selfish, Aisha. Islam gives me this right, and you as a Muslim should support me. Look how Allah has blessed me financially. I can easily care for 2 families, and Zara won't take anything from you. On the contrary, she might even help you with household tasks. What hurt me most was realizing he had no idea of the real financial impact of this decision. He spoke of renting a $750 apartment for Zara, giving her a $500 monthly allowance, possibly having children with her. But with what money? His salary barely covered our own house and only seemed sufficient because I was secretly financing most of everything. At that moment, I was tempted several times to tell the truth, to show bank statements, to reveal who really financed our prosperous life. But something stopped me. Perhaps wounded pride, perhaps hope that he would give up on his own, perhaps fear of seeing him discover he wasn't the provider man he believed himself to be. The worst was still to come, his family's reaction when I asked for help. And it was at that moment that I discovered something terrible about the people I loved and had been helping for years. Something that made me make the most radical decision of my life. Desperate and alone, I made a decision that would change everything. Turn to Yusuf's family. After all, these were people I loved, whom I had been helping financially for years. Surely they would support me in this difficult moment. How wrong I was. I started with his mother, Yusuf, a 60-year-old lady who had always treated me like a daughter. I called her crying, explained my anguish, asked her to talk to Yusuf and make him see that our marriage didn't need a third person. Her response destroyed me. Aisha, daughter, you're being very selfish. Yusuf is a financially blessed man. He has the right to have more than one wife. You should thank Allah for having such a prosperous husband who can care for 2 families. Then came his brothers, Saeed and Ibrahim. I arranged to meet them, thinking that as married men they would understand my position. Said was direct. Aisha, you know our brother's financial situation. He earns well, helps the whole family, pays his bills on time. Why do you want to prevent him from exercising a right that Allah gave him? Ibrahim was even crueler. Honestly, Aisha, it seems like you want to monopolize Yusuf's wealth. How many families do we know where the husband earns less and still manages to have 2 wives? Yusuf has more than enough means, and you're being greedy. The younger sister-in-law, Saeed's wife, was who hurt me most. Aisha, everyone knows Yusuf is very generous, always helping his parents, paying for Mariam's studies, helping when someone needs it. Do you want him to stop helping his own family just to please you? Do you want to enjoy his prosperity alone? The entire family turned against me. They called me selfish, greedy, wanting to monopolize Yusuf. They said I should be grateful for having such a prosperous and generous husband, that other women would give anything to be in my place. Look how much he helps our family, Aisha. What a blessed man. And you want to deprive him of the right to extend these blessings to another family? The most ironic thing is that they spoke of Yusuf's wealth, Yusuf's generosity, Yusuf's resources that came from my pocket for 8 years. They had no idea that I was the true financier of all that prosperity they so admired in him. That night, I cried like I had never cried in my life. The family I loved, whom I secretly supported, whom I helped in all difficulties, had completely abandoned me. Worse than that, they saw me as an obstacle to Yusuf's happiness and rights. If they knew I had been financing his generosity for years, but I decided it was time for them to discover the truth in the most impactful way possible. And that's when I devised a plan that would exceed even my boldest expectations. Yusuf's marriage to Zara was scheduled to happen 3 months after that fateful conversation. And it was during these 3 months that I architected the most elaborate plan of my life. It wouldn't be destructive revenge, but rather revelatory. I wanted everyone to discover the truth in the most natural way possible. First, I began documenting everything. I separated all transfer receipts I had made to Yusuf's account over the years. It was more than $70,000 over 8 years, money that had allowed him to be the generous brother, the dedicated son, the provider husband. I organized by categories: family help, medical emergencies, household bills, investments he thought he had made with his savings. Simultaneously, I opened completely separate bank accounts. I redirected all my earnings, company salary, consulting profits, investments, to these new accounts. Yusuf had no idea I earned over $3,500 per month, so this went unnoticed. The most delicate part was calculating exactly how much each family member received in help from Yusuf monthly. His mother received $170 for his father's medications. Mariam received $500 for studies. The other brothers received sporadic help, totaling about $350 per month. In total, I was transferring about $1,400 monthly in Yusuf's generosity, more than he earned net at work. During wedding preparations, I maintained my facade perfectly. I financed the party, $5,000 for catering, decoration, gift for the bride, as I always did, secretly. I smiled at Zara, congratulated her, wished her happiness. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and superiority, clearly thinking, poor first wife who'll have to share her husband's wealth. On the wedding day, I made a decision that would shock that entire family. I wouldn't reveal anything dramatically. I wouldn't make scenes or confrontations. I would simply stop paying and watch the show that would follow. From their honeymoon onward, I would execute my plan silently and surgically. On that same night of the celebration, when everyone was celebrating Yusuf's wisdom in choosing such a suitable second wife and my maturity in accepting the situation, I was at home canceling all automatic transfers, changing all passwords for services I paid for, and preparing for the spectacle that would follow. I cut all secret transfers at once. No more transfers for Yusuf to help family, no more payment of extra household bills, no more sustaining his image as a prosperous man. I completely separated my finances and began paying only my mathematically fair share of everything. But what happened in the following months was even more satisfying than I expected. The first signs of financial catastrophe appeared in the second week after the wedding. Yusuf had rented a 2-bedroom apartment for Zara for $750 monthly, practically his entire net salary. Additionally, he had promised a $500 allowance so she could maintain herself with dignity. In his mind, these $1,250 were perfectly viable since money always remained at month's end. The first shock came when bills for our own house began arriving. The $150 electricity bill, which I always paid discreetly, was now sitting unpaid on the table. The annual property tax of $600, which I settled yearly, came due without payment. The HOA fees, internet, health insurance, all bills I silently assumed now depended exclusively on Yusuf's budget. He spent hours in front of the computer, obsessively redoing calculations. Aisha, I don't understand what's happening. My salary was always sufficient for our house, and there was still left over to help my family. How is it now not even enough for our own expenses? I feigned concern and offered my small contribution of $350, less than 1/10 of my real income. Zara began demanding what was promised. She wanted the allowance, wanted him to furnish the apartment, wanted him to fulfill all promises made during engagement. Yusuf, you said you could give me a comfortable life. Where's the money you promised? Discussions between them became frequent and heated. But most interesting was observing Yusuf's growing desperation to maintain appearances. He began taking bank loans, requesting salary advances, selling personal items, all to avoid admitting he had completely overestimated his financial capacity. At home, I maintained my impeccable performance. When he complained about overdue bills, I said, Habibi, maybe it's the adjustment period. Allah knows all things. When he despaired about not being able to help family as before, I consoled, don't worry, love, things will adjust with time. Most cruel was seeing him losing weight, sleeping poorly, becoming anxious and stressed. The confident man who decided to marry a second wife was now transforming into an anguished person who couldn't understand why his financial life had collapsed overnight. Meanwhile, his family began feeling the impact of missing financial help they had received for years. Yusuf called, demanding the monthly $170 for his father's medications. Mariam couldn't pay university tuition, said asked for the usual loan for an emergency, and was denied. The prosperous and generous son had disappeared, and they didn't understand why. And that's when the situation became really interesting, because they found a perfect scapegoat for all problems: Zahra. The family's logic was brutally simple. Before marriage with the second wife, Yusuf was generous and prosperous. After marriage, generosity had ceased. Therefore, the blame obviously lay with the new wife. Yusuf was first to verbalize this theory. That girl turned my son's head. Before he thought about family, now he only thinks about her. The calls I received from her became constant and venomous. Aisha, daughter, you who are the sensible wife need to talk to Yusuf. This Zahra is making him forget his own family obligations. Said was even more direct in a conversation we had. Aisha, honestly, this second wife was the worst thing that happened to our family. Yusuf changed completely. Before he was generous, helped everyone. Now it seems she forbade him from spending money on us. At least you never did that. You were always understanding about his generosity. The situation's irony was delicious to witness. Now I was painted as the exemplary first wife who never created financial problems for Yusuf. I suddenly became the family favorite, the perfect daughter-in-law who understood her husband's family responsibilities. Ibrahim went as far as asking me to intercede. Aisha, can you talk to our brother? Explain that he can't put family second because of his new wife? You were always different, always supportive when he helped us. I participated in family meetings where everyone lamented how Zahra had changed Yusuf. I consoled Yusuf when she cried about the selfish and greedy new daughter-in-law. She only thinks about herself, his mother said. Not like you, Aisha, who was always a wife who understands that a man has obligations to his family. Mariam, who had to suspend university for inability to pay, was particularly bitter. This Zahra destroyed our brother. Before he was a man, now he's a puppet in her hands. I bet she forbade him from helping family because she wants all his money just for herself. During these family gatherings, I played my role as understanding first wife to perfection. I agreed the situation was concerning, said I would try to talk to Yusuf, pretended to be as confused as they were about the sudden change in his behavior. Best of all was seeing how they completely rewrote the narrative about me. Months before, I was the selfish wife who wanted to monopolize her husband's wealth. Now I was the sensible wife who always supported his family responsibilities. The same family that brutally attacked me when I tried to prevent the second marriage now treated me as an ally against Zahra's negative influence. The best was still to come, the day when truth finally came to light. 6 months after the second marriage, Yusuf's financial situation had become unsustainable. He owed 3 months' rent on Zahra's apartment. Our own bills were overdue, and the entire family was demanding return of habitual generosity. That's when Yusuf decided to take drastic action, personally investigate her son's finances. She arranged a serious conversation with Yusuf and for the first time in years asked direct questions about money. Son, exactly how much do you earn? How much do your monthly expenses cost? How could you help the whole family before and now you can't anymore? Yusuf, mentally exhausted and with no more energy for lies, began to crumble. During this conversation, truth began emerging fragmentarily. Yusuf admitted his net salary was $1,000, admitted Zahra's apartment cost $750, admitted our house bills totaled about $700 monthly. The math was too simple. $750 in expenses with $1,000 income. But son, said Yusuf confused, then how could you pay all this before and still help family? That's when Yusuf, in a moment of total desperation, revealed what I had been waiting months for. Mother, I think Aisha always helped more than I imagined. Yusuf's investigation became increasingly meticulous. She requested bank statements, questioned every transfer, every payment. That's when they discovered the $70,000 I had transferred to Yusuf's account over the years. Money that had financed Mariam's university, parents' medical treatments, all family emergencies, all generosities attributed to him. When Yusuf called a family meeting to share this discovery, silence was deafening. Said leafed through bank statements with wide eyes. Ibrahim mentally calculated how many months of financial help had actually come from my account. Mariam cried, realizing her 4 years of private university were financed by the sister-in-law they had insulted. This means that, began Saeed, but couldn't finish the sentence. Yes, This meant that I was the true provider of that family for 8 years. This meant that Yusuf's wealth they so admired was actually my income. This meant that when they accused me of wanting to monopolize his money, they were talking about my own money. The most shocking discovery came when they realized Yusuf had made the decision to remarry based on a financial illusion that I had created. He really thought he earned enough to support 2 families because I made it seem his salary covered all our expenses. Yusuf was first to verbalize the obvious. You mean Aisha, that our Aisha was the one who... She couldn't complete, but everyone understood. The woman they had attacked, humiliated, and isolated was the family's true benefactor. The woman they called greedy was the one financially supporting them all. Yusuf discovered his decision to have 2 wives was based on a completely false assessment of his financial capacity. He didn't even have real means to adequately support 1 household, much less 2. The prosperity that motivated him to seek a second wife was entirely fictitious. What followed the truth's discovery was a spectacle of repentance oscillating between pathetic and satisfying. Yusuf was first to come to me, and the scene was something I'll never forget. This 60-year-old woman, who months before had called me selfish and greedy, was at my door crying like a child. Aisha, daughter, forgive this ignorant old woman. I didn't know, wallahi, I didn't know you were the one sustaining our family all these years. How could I treat you so badly? How could I accuse you of wanting to monopolize money when it was your money being used? She knelt before me, literally knelt, begging forgiveness. Said and Ibrahim came together, and their humiliation was palpable. Aisha, said Saeed, we're 2 grown men coming to apologize to a woman we helped hurt unjustly. You financed our children's studies, helped in our emergencies, sustained our parents, and we called you greedy. Ibrahim could barely look me in the eyes. How can you look at us without hatred? I accused you of wanting to take advantage of my brother's money when you were giving money for him to help us. Mariam was the one who most moved me. She arrived with her university diploma in hand and said, Aunt Aisha, this diploma has your name on it, not my brother's. It was 4 years of tuition you paid while I treated you like a stranger in your own family. You financed my future, and I repaid you with contempt. The entire family began constantly seeking me out. Yusuf called daily. Daughter, please, you need to help us again. Without you, we can't manage anymore. Father needs medications. Bills are overdue. We don't know how to cope anymore. They had discovered that I was the true financial pillar of that family for almost a decade. Said went so far as offering me half his salary. Aisha, take this money. It's the least I can do. You supported my family when I needed it. Now I want to reciprocate. But I politely refused. It wasn't about money. It never was. It was about respect, dignity, and recognition. Most interesting was observing how Zara fit into this new narrative. The family realized she wasn't the greedy villain they had imagined. She was just a 23-year-old young woman who had married expecting a comfortable life with a man who seemed prosperous. The real victim was her, who discovered she had married someone who couldn't adequately support her. Zara began coming to talk to me, initially with shame, later with genuine admiration. Aisha, you're an incredible woman. You sustained an entire family in silence, preserved your husband's pride, and even after everything they did to you, you didn't take cruel revenge. She told me about financial difficulties she faced, about promises Yusuf had made but couldn't keep. He promised me a $500 monthly allowance, Aisha. To this day, I've only received it once. He promised to furnish the apartment. To this day, I only have what my family managed to give. I didn't marry to be a financial burden to anyone. Zara was genuinely regretful and confused about what to do. Yusuf was in the worst psychological state. Discovering that his entire identity as provider man had been a farce created by me devastated him completely. He sought me out weekly. Aisha, how could you love me so much as to create this illusion for me? And how was I so blind as not to notice? He cried, despaired, promised he would do anything to regain my respect. Today, almost a year after truth's revelation, I can say I learned lessons that completely changed my perspective on relationships, money, and dignity. The first and most important lesson was that protecting someone's ego at truth's expense creates relationships based on dangerous lies. When I created the illusion that Yusuf was financially prosperous, I wasn't just being generous, I was allowing him to make important decisions based on false information. The second lesson was about true Islamic teachings on marriage and financial responsibility. Islam doesn't merely permit polygamy. It requires that a man have real means to support multiple wives equitably. Yusuf violated this fundamental principle when he decided to remarry without having adequate personal resources. Religion should never be used to justify irresponsible decisions. I also learned that our greatest generosity can become our greatest trap when done secretly and with misguided motivations. For 8 years, I thought I was demonstrating love by secretly sustaining my family. In reality, I was creating toxic codependency that prevented Yusuf from growing financially and assuming true responsibilities. The most painful lesson was about precipitate family judgments. The family that loved me for years rejected me within days when their interests were threatened. This taught me that relationships based only on financial benefits are extremely fragile and can quickly transform into hostility. Regarding personal situations' outcomes, Yusuf eventually divorced Zara, not by choice, but because he simply couldn't support her. She returned to her parents' house and today works as a teacher, building her own financial independence. Ironically, we became friends, two women who learned about financial transparency's importance in different ways. Yusuf continues seeking me out, asking for a second chance, promising total transparency. But something fundamental broke in me. It wasn't just the second wife issue. It was discovering the man I loved was capable of making decisions that would profoundly affect my life without even consulting our financial reality. Today, I'm focused on rebuilding my life based on honest and transparent relationships. Financially, I've never been better. My consulting company has grown significantly, and for the first time in years, I'm spending my money on myself. Emotionally, I'm still healing, but each day stronger and more aware of my worth. To women listening, your generosity shouldn't come at your dignity's expense. Helping your partner is beautiful, but doing so while hiding your own financial capacity can create dangerous relationship imbalances. Transparency is fundamental in any healthy marriage. If this story touched you in any way, share this video with others who might identify or learn from this experience. Send this video to family groups, friends, on WhatsApp, wherever you want. Sometimes our most difficult experiences can help someone make better decisions or avoid similar traps. And subscribe to the channel for more testimonies like this, real stories that make us reflect on relationships, money, and dignity. Your experiences and comments also enrich our community, so don't forget to share your reflections below.